Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Silent Paths, Wild Hearts. Episode 7. Chapter 45. Helios POV. I could feel the sparks on my torso as well as pain as I opened my eyes. Nat's face came into view. There was blood and sweat dripping from her hairline and she looked like she was about to pass out. Despite this, she smiled down when our eyes met. I sat up to look at what was going on around us and she grabbed my head in her hands and kissed me deeply. We stood up and she placed her hand on my chest. "I have to go help the others," she said, and I furrowed my brows in worry. "You're already exhausted, Amor," I told her softly as I checked her head wound. I looked closed already. "I have to Helios. I can help," she said. I sighed, "Only those that are close to death. Save your energy. Get them to where their natural healing will keep them alive, okay?" I said. I wanted to drag her back inside and lock her up, but she was the white wolf. This was her purpose. She nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. I looked around at the fighting. It looked like we were winning. Enough fighting. We've come here for one reason. We don't need to destroy everyone to get what we want. Shane Doyle comes around the back of the SUVs. He hadn't even bothered to join his people. "What reason is that?" I asked, buying some time as I walked around Celeste and Marcus. I knew we were winning. Why would I give him anything? "I want the white wolf," he said, and I heard several growls, not only from my pack but Crescent Moon. "She doesn't belong to you." "She doesn't belong to anyone," I growled back, and because I needed to make it known I added, "She is my mate." "Oh, is he marked? That makes things easier." "I, Shane Doyle, leader of the Rogues, challenge you for your title of Alpha, your pack, and Luna." I was taken off guard at that but didn't allow my face to show it. I heard Celeste's soft but terrified no behind me and realized this must be triggering the night she lost her pack and family. At the very place we are standing in now. Our story will have a different outcome. Ezekiel's determination flowed strength through me. "I accept. Tell what's left of your people to stop their attack or I will rip out each of their throats." This needed to end. I was surprised and touched to hear my pack and Crescent Moon howl in support. I pointed to the training grounds on the left. "The grounds are over there. I need 2 minutes to look after my people." "Take 5 to say goodbye," he said derisively. "Helios, let me heal you more," Nat came up to me. "I will be fine. You've healed me enough." I tentatively moved my hand from my side and inwardly sighed in relief. "See, not bleeding anymore. Go help the others." I gave her a quick kiss and patted her as she went to where the wounded were gathering. Her steps were slow and heavy. I turned to Celeste and Marcus. "Please make sure she doesn't overexert herself and sit with her so she has someone to help her through the fight. She can't interfere." Marcus nodded, while Celeste continued to sob in his arms. "Don't cry, Celeste. You know I'm a tough cookie." I winked at her, then softly added, "It won't be like the last time. I promise, these pack grounds will not see another fight of innocent people." She gave a final sob and then hugged me tightly. I walked over to Gonzalo and Sebastian. "Where's Theo?" Sebastian sighed, he's doing something stupid and if it gets him killed, I'll kill him. I resent that, said Theo's voice from behind me. I've taken care of the other rocket launcher. It's somewhere in the woods. We'll retrieve it after you kill this, he said confidently. Be ready to grab the rogues that are still alive. They can be crammed into the dungeons for all I care. Ask Marcus if we can use his if we run out of room. Anyone that doesn't surrender, kill them. We'll go through the SUVs after the fight and see if we can find anything. I gotta go, keep an eye on Nat. They patted me on the shoulder as I passed through them to the training area. His rogues were already seated on one half, while my pack and Crescent Moon were on the other. I walked to the center of the area where Shane had removed his suit and was now wearing athletic shorts. I moved my torso tentatively to see how much mobility I had until it finished healing. Marcus stepped forward as the witness to the challenge. I looked up at the half-moon. Please don't make me a liar. I promised to protect her and them. This is a battle to the death or surrender. The challenge is for the right to lead Guardian Moon as Alpha and its Luna. Begin, he said, and sat back down. I catch a quick glimpse of Natalia approaching where he is sitting with Gonzalo, who is holding her up. I told you not to overdo it, I growled at her as Shane and I circled each other. Concentrate before I have to mate with him, she responded, and I felt the rage rise up my throat at her words and I let out a roar. I notice a slight hesitation from Shane when he hears me and I smirk, making him charge at me. I dodged him easily, making him kick up dust as he skidded to a halt. He turned around and charged again, and this time I met him head-on. He swings at my head, claws extended. I ducked under his swing and punched him in the gut, sending him stumbling backwards. I growled as I punched him while he tried to retreat from me. He stumbled backwards and falls on him. I continued to stalk forward, and he swept my foot when I got too close. I stumbled backwards but managed to keep my balance. He charged forward and began swinging. I managed to dodge too, but I caught the third in rib. I felt it crack and took a step back when he tried to follow it with a roundhouse kick. He didn't give me time to recover as he rushed me with another flurry of punches to my torso. I managed to trap his right arm to my body and used his own momentum to flip him over. He scurried away and stood, panting, and covered in dirt. He rushed back within striking rage and I could see him getting frustrated. We exchange blow for blow but he's losing steam. I'm landing punches that his wolf speed should be able to block. I punched him in the jaw and he spit out blood and a tooth. He rushes at me, snarling, and we end up grappling on the ground. He is roaring in rage as I straddle him and throw punch after punch. His brow bursts open under my hands and the blood is flowing everywhere. He is only managing to catch half of my punches and his face is becoming unrecognizable. Finally, he manages to push me off him with both feet and I land on a couple feet away. He quickly launches at me, trying to reverse the roles, but I use my knees to flip and launch him away from me. I moved to stand up but I began to feel a burning in my chest. I look down and I see a small shiny metal pin in the middle of my chest, a purple substance burning under the surface. I stumble trying to stand up as the burning spreads. Ezekiel, what is this? I asked. Wolfsbane, he growls. I can get it out of our system, but you need to buy me some time. I tried and failed to stand again and I can see my pack and friends standing, afraid. I may not be able to die, but if I can't fight, I lose. I looked up to see Shane smirking at me. He walks slowly towards me, thinking me done. He should have really done his research before he attacked. I pulled the needle tip from my chest. I'm going to enjoy watching you die. Then I'm going to enjoy your mate before I use her to figure out the key to immortality. I'm going to bring your pathetic pack back to my lab. They will be the first to test the formula for me, he hissed. I chuckle, even though I'm raging inside. Ezekiel's anger is fueling his work and I can feel the effects of the wolf's bane begin to subside. My laugh causes Shane to pause. Your great-great-grandfather really took that rejection from my Luna personally, I tell him, and he begins to breathe heavily, full of anger. My family has spent generations looking for the white wolf. Researching the key to immortality for almost 300 years. She is the key. She will give us immortality. Did you know that only one white wolf can exist at a time? I was raised to know what she is, what makes her tick. She runs, finds a mate, then leaves him to die and runs again. You are nothing to her but a few decades of, and then she will run again. My entire childhood was spent looking for her, though she is easy on the eyes. He looked at Natalia's way and I felt my hatred bubbling as I fisted my hands while I waited to regain my strength. Don't look at her, I ground out. He smirked at me and began walking towards me again. I will spend eternity looking at her body, bruised and abused. I will hit her, rape her and sell the key to immortality to the highest bidders, but not before I destroy the pack and council that shunned my father's research and took away our pack, he said as he grabbed me by the throat and lifted me up. Let's finish this, Ezekiel growled in my head as I let him come forward. You're not getting my mate, and you're not getting my pack. You will never touch another shifter again. In fact, you're not going to get to live past the next 2 minutes. Ezekiel's and my voice overlapped and Shane hesitated as he noticed my one black eye and one brown. You should have done a little research into who you were with, I said as I gripped the hand that's holding my throat and begin to remove it. We are Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec god of sun and war, and we protect what is ours. I felt my power at the tip of my fingers and I punched him in the guts as hard as I could. I could feel the electricity flow from my hand and into his torso. He released me and flew backwards, landing with a hard thud. I could see his entire body spasming from the electric shock I'd pumped through his body. He shifted, trying to get his body to shake off the shock during the shift, but we were ready. I let Ezekiel come forward and by the time Shane had shifted, his neck was in our muzzle and I heard the sickening rip of flesh and bone as we detached his head from his body. Ezekiel retreated back to share control again and we shifted into human form. I lifted Shane's head towards the rogues and summoned my staff. We weren't quite done just yet. Your leader is dead. Your lives belong to me now. Surrender in peace and face the judgment of the council or die, I said, my warriors and Crescent Moon's warriors already surrounding them. A few shifted and began to run, but I jumped in front of them and let the lighting leave my staff. I usually don't aim to kill, but these people came into my home, hurt my pack and tried to take my mate from me. I had no remorse when their bodies convulsed and they fell to the ground, dead. I looked at the rest of them and saw their shocked expressions before they dropped to the ground and put their hands up. I walked through several people on my way to Natalia. They bowed their heads to show respect. Natalia was walking towards me with the help of Gonzalo. Marcus was holding on to Celeste, whose eyes were rimmed red and she kept cleaning her nose. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, Celeste," I said as I pulled Natalia to my side and picked her up. She wrapped her arms around my neck and I heard her sigh and felt her head on my chest. "I'm so glad you're okay. I got really worried when you couldn't stand," she said, and snuggled further into Marcus' embrace. "What was that? You were fine 1 minute and then you were stumbling the next?" Marcus asked. "Wolf's bane. He injected me when he launched at me, but Ezekiel was able to deal with it quickly. It burnt though." Marcus' eyes went wide and Celeste whimpered. "It's all okay now, Celeste." "It's over," I said softly. "Thank you for coming to our help, Marcus. I really can't express how much it means to us." I told him, meaning every word. "We are family now, Helios. No thanks needed. I'm going to take Celeste home but I'll leave you a few warriors to help with the rogues. Call us or have Nat reach out if you need anything. Evergreen will be sending all of this information to the council and, hopefully, they will arrive within a few hours and deal with the rogues." I nodded and added, "Theo should be looking through their vehicles. If we find anything relevant we'll let you know. Have a good night." I walked towards the pack house and stopped to inspect the damage. Most of it held up okay but the shutters and some windows would need to be replaced. I saw Mama Isabel walk out and she beelined for me as fast as she could. "What happened?" "Something shook the house and Tyler came to get me and put me in the basement." "What happened to Nat?" "She's fine, Mama Isabel. She is just tired. We had an attack from some bad people and she helped heal the injured. Everything is fine now." I was touched by the concern she showed towards Nat as she caressed her sleeping face to assure herself that she was fine. She looked around and noticed the destruction, bodies, and warriors cleaning up. "I will make some food for everyone. Go put Nat in bed. I'll make sure to check on her while you take care of your boys," she instructed, and I chuckled. "Yes, Mama Isabel. I'm sure everyone will appreciate your food after all the work we've got ahead of us." I walked into the pack house as the few mates were walking out of the basement. They looked at Nat in my arms in dismay. "She is fine, just tired. Please assist Mama Isabel or help with some of the clean-up." "I'm glad to see all of you unharmed," I said, and continued up the stairs. I laid Nat down and pulled the covers over her before I went into the bathroom for a cloth. That was when I noticed all the dried blood on my body. I cleaned her face and smiled as she purred but didn't wake. I went and took a quick shower and put on a pair of jeans and shirt before I went back down to help. Gonzalo and Evergreen were walking inside with a bunch of electronics, followed by Theo, who had both rocket launchers in his arms and looked like a kid with new toys. "Lock that up somewhere secure before you hurt yourself," I chuckled at him. "Where are you guys setting up?" "Conference room. Evergreen is going to try to crack the security encryption." "I'm glad to see you up and about, Alpha Helios." "That explosion looked really bad," Evergreen said. "You saw it?" I asked. He nodded and looked a little awkward. "I got a notification when you pushed the lockdown button." I'm sorry if that's overstepping. I've kind of grown fond of you guys, so I looked at the cameras and told my Alpha. "Thank you." You saved a lot of lives, I told him, and his face looked relieved. I went outside and started to take a full inventory of the damage. Aside from the packhouse and gates, there was no physical damage. I walked over to Sebastian, who was giving out instructions for the cleanup. We're gathering all the dead rogues and humans for burning. He motioned to an area far away from the packhouse. Did we lose anyone? I asked. We lost Alexander, the Puma. He was the gate guard on shift. The rest, Nat healed us all. Helios. I thought I was done for. Our Luna is truly a miracle worker, he said, and I could feel the emotion in his voice. I gave him a hug. Why don't you go look for Theo and call it a night? Nat will be sleeping for a while, so I can take over the rest of the cleanup. He nodded and left, and I began helping with the body cleanup. I grabbed Shane's body and threw it unceremoniously into the pile. I grabbed his head and clothing and noticed it was heavier than it should be. I looked through the pockets and found a cell phone. It began buzzing as I held it. The contact ID said Dad. Gonzalo, tell Evergreen I have Shane's phone. Maybe it will help, I said. I'll be right out for it, he said. I was watching the pile of bodies burn when I felt Gonzalo at my side. Hell of a night, Alpha, he said. Yeah. Glad we kept casualties to a minimum, I said. You and me both. We stood there watching the fire burn before he said, I'm enjoying putting down roots. I was never one to like moving around so much, he said. Yeah, me either. Things should settle down a bit now. We have a lot of work to keep us busy for a while. Hopefully, Evergreen can get into their networks and finally take down the rest of their labs. Then we can just live. I said, then smirked, and maybe you can find your mate soon. Nat needs some help from her beta. He rolled his eyes at me and took the phone, but I saw the longing in his eyes. I hadn't seen him with a partner for at least 2 centuries, and while I tried not to pry, I could tell something was holding him back. After the cleanup, I sent a few emails out for materials and repairs to Alpharet before I went back inside to see everyone sitting around while Mama Isabel was fussing over some people that still had a few injuries. I grabbed a plate of snacks and took it up to the room. Natalia would be hungry when she woke up. I crawled in with her and pulled her to me. You did so good tonight. You saved so many of us. I whispered to her. She cuddled further into me but didn't wake up. I gave her forehead a kiss and inhaled her scent of passion fruit and flan, letting it lull me into sleep. Natalia POV. I woke up and smiled. I could feel and smell Helios all around me. His leg was wrapped over mine and his head on my chest. I loved waking up and feeling every inch of his body on mine, cradling me in a cocoon of warmth, love, and safety. I looked down at him and brushed my hand through his tangled hair. He murmured happily and snuggled closer. It was so hard to watch him fight after the explosion last night. I knew he was still hurt, but he wouldn't let me heal him fully. He was more worried about me than himself. I felt every hit he took on my body, and when the wolf's bane went into his chest, I thought I would pass out from the burning pain. I don't know how he managed to get through the pain and kill Shane. I don't know what happened after that. I guess I should go check to make sure everyone is fine. We should do that, but we should also make sure Mate is taken care of too. Hestia purred the suggestion. Well, I'm sure if we were needed, they would have tried to contact us by now. I agreed as my hand down his body until I found what I was looking for. You're amazing, he said, a satisfied smile on his face. Hestia was purring with pride at being able to satisfy our mate, happy I followed her suggestion. I didn't think you'd wake up this early. You used up a lot of energy last night, he mentioned as he drew lazy circles on my back. My bond to Hestia has been getting stronger again, and the mate bond helps a lot. I kissed his chest. My stomach decided to make itself known at that moment, making Helios' chest rumble as if a chuckle came out. I grabbed you some snacks, but by the way the sun is shining, I'd imagine we could probably head down for lunch or dinner after a shower, he said, and he stretched his hand out behind him to look at his phone. Lunch, definitely lunch. It's not even 1 in the afternoon. Are you sure you don't need more sleep? He asked as I sat up. I'm good. I would imagine we have a lot of things to do after everything last night, I said as I stretched. His eyes began to darken with lust as he looked at me stretching, making the shirt right up to reveal my behind. Most of the cleanup is done, but we'll have to do a bit of fixing to the outside of the packhouse and the gates, he answered. Did we lose anyone? I asked quietly as we went into the shower. Alexander, he said, and I looked down at my feet. He had been sweet. Always first to offer a kind smile and ask if you needed help. Hey, he said softly and pulled my chin up with his hand, making me look into his eyes. You saved so many yesterday. He was shot in the head. There was nothing you could have done. He didn't suffer, Nat. He died trying to protect us. We will give him the send-off he deserves and my sister will look after him then. I nodded and hugged him, letting the mate bond soothe my pain. We changed and headed down. There were a lot of people moving about and even more napping on couches. They looked like they were trying to get rid of all the dust and debris from the explosion. The double doors were open and the ruined couches were being removed. There seemed to be a sense of urgency to their actions. What's going on? Helios asked and I heard running from behind us. The council is coming tomorrow evening and the vampire royals will be here later in the evening. They have requested that we house them until the following day so they don't risk traveling in the daylight by the time we're done. Evergreen unlocked Shane's electronics and we've got locations, emails. We hit the motherlode. Gonzalo said. What motherlode? I asked. We found some electronics in the SUVs they came in. Evergreen's been working on them all morning. He managed to break through and download a lot before the father must have realized why he didn't answer the phone and sent a remote wipe on his phone and computer. He said, It's good to see you up, Nat. I didn't think we'd see you up and about for a few days. I smiled at the warmth in his words. We are getting stronger and the mate bond always helps. Nat. Celeste's tentative mind link came through. Hi. How are you feeling? I asked her, remembering her distress yesterday. How am I feeling? Nat, you realize you healed like 40 people yesterday? I thought you would sleep for weeks. I'm getting stronger now that I'm marked. I'm fine, Celeste, I told her, touched by her concern, wondering how I had gotten so lucky to have such a caring group of people in my life after all this time. Hang on one sec, she said, and cut off the mind link. I waited for a minute before she came back. Do you want to come with us to dinner? Get a small break from all the chaos of packed duties. I'll ask Helios and get back to you. I told her. Everything okay? Helios asked. I think so. Celeste and Marcus want to take us out for dinner, I said. His brows shot up at that. Why? He asked. I'm not sure. I told her I'd ask you, I said. Do you want to go? He asked. I was going to say I didn't care, but that wasn't true. I think I would actually, I said, and he nodded at me with a smile. Gonzalo, do we know how many people are coming? I asked. We needed to get the suites ready. All 5 councilmen and the king and queen of the vampires with a few guards each, he said. I nodded and looked up at Helios. I'll let Celeste know and get the suites ready. Meet you back here in a while. He kissed me and nodded. I have to go talk to Alfred about the repairs and get the pyre ready for Alexander. After the pyre ceremony, around 5 p.m., I met Helios back in our room. We showered and changed and headed towards the vehicles. We were met by Tyler at the door. What's going on? I asked. Alpha Marcus contacted Theo and requested that we drive you to the restaurant. He said you wouldn't need a ride back, he explained. I looked at Helios and he only shrugged. At this point, I would just go with the flow. You never know what they've got planned this time. He wrapped his arm around my waist and we followed Tyler to the SUV. We arrived at a little restaurant strip in the nearby town. Tyler stops next to Marcus' truck and lets us out. He leaves us there as I look around. I thought you didn't do Italian restaurants, Marcus, Helios smirks, and I feel like I've missed some kind of inside joke. Marcus covers a laugh with a cough as Celeste looks shocked before she starts laughing. Oh goddess, you told him? No, I just happened to mention that if he wanted to know why we never eat there, he should ask you, he said, blushing. We're not eating Italian, Helios, we just needed a place with multiple open parking spaces. We're having dinner at a little Indian restaurant down the street. It seems to be all I crave lately, she said. Why did you need multiple open parking spaces? I asked. Marcus grinned at us and beckoned us over to the other side of his truck. We came around the corner and both of our jaws dropped. It was Helios' Lamborghini, looking good as new. Catch, Marcus said as he tossed the keys to Helios, who didn't react in time and the keys hit him right on the nose, leaving a bright red mark. I doubled over in laughter as Marcus said, Sorry man, I thought you'd catch it. How was I supposed to know you were throwing them? Helios said indignantly as he bent down to pick up the keys. He looked at me annoyed, but I was too overcome with giggles. Oh, but when it was me you were all like werewolves are supposed to have fast reflexes, I mocked. My eyes were already tearing up and I couldn't get a deep breath in. Marcus and Celeste were just looking at me with amusement, not knowing what happened that night with Helios and Gonzalo. Wait until I tell Gonzalo. I cackled. You will do no such thing, woman, Helios warned, but I could feel nothing but amusement from the bond. He started marching towards me, a mischievous glint in his eyes and I knew what would happen, so I took off running down the street, Helios hot on my heels. I wasn't really a match for his speed and before I could get very far, he grabbed me by the waist and tickled me until I thought I would pass out. I finally surrendered, getting pretty close to losing control of my bladder, and begged him to stop. He lifted me over his shoulder, and walked back towards Celeste and Marcus, who were holding each other and smiling at us. A few people walking on the sidewalk looked at us strangely, but I simply grinned at them and they shook their heads with a smile and kept on their way. "So you like the surprise?" Marcus asked as Helios put me down. "It's amazing," Helios said as he went to look at the car. I was almost jealous at the way he lovingly let his hand caress the hood. "I thought we had dumped it in a junkyard in Cali after we limped it back to the city," he said. "We were going to, but I thought it would be a shame to let a car like this go to the junkyard to die, so I sent someone to drop it off in a storage locker and then sent it to the collision repair place. I had originally wanted to have it done for your birthday, but it wasn't ready. I was told it was a limited edition and they needed time to get the right parts," Marcus explained. Helios smiled wide and threw the keys in the air before he caught them and pointed at me. "You're not allowed to drive it again." And everyone laughed at me. I pouted. "Oh, come on. I saved you, didn't I?" I complained before I let him drag me to dinner. The food was pretty good and I enjoyed getting to know Marcus and Celeste more personally. Celeste made a request at the end of dinner that made Helios' emotions go haywire. We drove back in silence, with me holding his hand to soothe the torrent of emotions in him. We went to bed that night and I woke up to an empty bed a few hours later. I looked around and noticed the balcony door was open. I found Helios outside, looking up at the moon. It was only a waning crescent, but I knew he was talking to his sister. I wrapped my arms around his waist and he turned around to look at me. There were tears in his eyes and a small smile. "Sorry I woke you. I just wanted to thank her," he said before he lifted me in his arms and carried us back into bed. We laid in bed for a while before we fell back to sleep again. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. Helios' POV Natalia kept fidgeting nervously while we waited at the front of the house after we got word that the council was at the gates. We saw Celeste, Marcus with Jillian and Danny coming to join us from the side and she relaxed a little more. I know she didn't like one of the councilmen and preferred to have Celeste as backup. I didn't like him very much either. He came across very crass and disrespectful. He was one of the first to push back on sanctioning us as a pack and hadn't seemed happy when it was approved. Theo, Sebastian, and Gonzalo joined us on the steps. "All of them are here?" Marcus asked as we saw the two SUVs coming toward us. "Yes, and they specifically asked for you to be here, despite having informed them that you would be present," I told him. I found it odd that they wanted to make sure they were here. They were our sponsors. Until our probationary period was done, they were to be involved in all dealings with the council. Odd, but we're here, so we'll find out soon, Marcus shrugged. The SUVs came to a stop and the 5 councilmen stepped out, which made me curious as to who was in the other SUV. The Vampire Royals wouldn't be traveling in the middle of the day. Alpha Helios, Alpha Marcus, Councilman Eric greets us while bowing to Natalia and Celeste. "Councilman, thank you for coming on short notice. We can show you to your rooms before we begin our meeting," I said. "I'm afraid we have a small deviation from the agenda, Alpha Helios. We have an outstanding issue we would like to address with Alpha Marcus and Luna Celeste, Councilman Matthias' words stopped me from making my way inside. What do you mean? Marcus asked, his frame tensing up. The SUV is opened by one of their guards and I instantly notice the shift in Celeste and Marcus' auras. There are waves of anger rolling off both of them. A slender pretty blonde is brought out in silver cuffs. We've had her passport flagged for a while now and we detained her a few days ago on her way to her restaurant, which she appears to be trying to sell, Councilman Mashas said. We thought we would give you a chance to face her before we bring her up on charges. I wasn't exactly sure what she had done, but from the way the anger was rolling off of Marcus and Celeste, and the others from Crescent Moon, I could tell this woman was an enemy of the entire pack. I looked back at the woman, who was doing her best to stand up straight and proud, but I could tell she was struggling with their powerful auras. Marcus finally spoke, "You betrayed the friendship we had with your father. We allowed you into our grounds, unrestricted, and you used that token of friendship to assist our enemies to spy, plan and hurt my pack. You made an attempt on my Luna and caused the death of a pack member. For what? For some deluded plan that I would one day take you as my Luna? Your privileges and my friendship were never anything more than respect for your father. That Omega should have never been made Luna. I am the daughter of an Alpha. I am the right woman for you and if you hadn't found her, I would have helped you see that." She spat and everyone growled at her words. Who did she think she was? Before anyone could say anything in response, she kept talking. I, Marcy Giordano, challenge the Luna of Crescent Moon for her title and mate. There were more growls heard everywhere, including Gabriel and my own warriors. Everyone was as loyal to Crescent Moon as they were to my pack after all the help they had provided us. You can't challenge a pregnant Luna, Councilman Eric said. It's okay, Councilman. I accept. Celeste's happy voice made all of us whip our heads towards her. Celeste, no, she could hurt the pup, Marcus said. She won't get a chance to. She is the reason Ruby is dead. She doesn't deserve a chance to argue her case and try to use her father to get her out the punishment she deserves, she said with fury in her voice. As worried as I was that she would get hurt, I actually felt sorry for this Marcy. Being the target of Celeste's fury, power, and aura was not something I ever wanted to experience again and she had never looked at me with that much hate. I looked over at Marcy and she seemed to be hesitating as well. I think her plan had been to get a stay at her trial until after Celeste gave birth and she could have her challenge. Likely, she was hoping she could get away before then. Marcus and Celeste's eyes glazed over as they talked it over. We all waited in silence for a few minutes until their eyes cleared and Marcus looked to be in pain. Trust me, my love, Celeste. My Luna accepts the challenge, Marcus said through gritted teeth. We walked to the grounds and sat near the entrance. Nat, I trust Celeste, but, I got you, Marcus. I won't let anything happen to her or your son, Natalia said. She was already sitting at the edge of the training barrier, ready to act. I gave her hand a kiss and dropped it. I wasn't about to distract her if she needed to run. Marcy's silver cuffs were removed and she walked into the training ring. Shouldn't Celeste change out of that skirt? I asked, worried about her mobility. Marcus sighed, she said she wouldn't need to. Trust her, Marcus. Our Luna has been training for months now. She's got some good moves, Danny said from behind. He had a look of pride and excitement on his face. It felt like he alone knew what Celeste was capable of. I turned back around as Councilman Matthias spoke. The challenge for the title of Luna of Crescent Moon can begin. Celeste spread her legs a little, and it was incredulous to see a pregnant she-wolf getting ready to spar. I could feel the tension coming from all of us as Marcy extended her claws. Celeste, however, looked calm and even happy. "You're going to have to charge first, dear. You can't really expect me to run in this condition, do you?" Celeste taunted, and Danny was struggling not to laugh. Marcy let out a growl and rushed at Celeste. My heart stopped and I held my breath as I saw her swing at Celeste's throat, but Celeste easily dodged it and grabbed Marcy by the throat and slammed her to the ground. Marcy didn't get back up. It took me a moment to realize what happened and notice the bright red liquid filling and spilling out of the space where Marcy's throat used to be. I looked at Celeste and she was holding Marcy's throat in her hand. She calmly dropped it on top of Marcy's stomach and began walking towards us. Marcus jumped over the barrier and ran to her as the rest of us just stared in shock. Danny whooped as he grabbed a towel and gave it to her as she approached. She cleaned her hands and looked at the councilman and calmly said with a smile, "We can continue with why you're here, councilman." I instructed someone to dispose of her body accordingly after the councilmen came out of their shock, and we began walking back to the pack house. "Danny was right, you know," I said to her. She moved her head at me in confusion and I grinned. "You're getting scary, Luna," I teased, and she chuckled. Marcus groaned, "Don't encourage this, Helios." I almost had a heart attack. We went into the pack house and I led them to the conference room. I looked back at where Marcus had stopped a few feet back as I let the councilman file in. His arm was around Celeste and his eyes were glazed over. I stopped Natalia from going in and she looked confused until she noticed Marcus' face beginning to look angry. When his eyes cleared, he said, "Gentlemen, I need to borrow Alpha Helios and his Luna for an urgent matter. It won't be but for a minute," and looked at Danny and Jillian, who nodded and went inside. I closed the door and walked into the adjacent soundproof room. Gabriel and Zach were on guard outside. I instructed Theo, Sebastian, and Gonzalo to go in and let me know if they needed anything through Mind Link. "What's going on?" I asked him. "Evergreen is on his way. He's found a connection from the corporation to one of the councilmen," he growled. "Which one?" I asked. "Councilman John," Natalia suggested. Marcus nodded. "That man rubbed me the wrong way from the moment I met him, and he always looks at you like..." She shivered and Celeste agreed with a nod of her head. "I'll have some guards ready outside. How do you want to handle this?" I asked him before I quickly asked my bears to wait for us outside the conference room. "We start with the councilman. There's no reason why we would tell him everything before we put him in cuffs." His eyes glazed and we heard a knock on the door. "That's Evergreen. Tulai, stay behind me in case he tries to make a run for it," he said, and Celeste simply nodded. I looked over at Natalia and she also nodded, threading her hand through mine. We walked out of the room and into the conference room. "Our apologies. We have some last-minute information for you that we feel we should get out of the way before we continue. I will let Alpha Marcus Security Tech explain," I said as Evergreen plugged his laptop into the TV. "Councilman," When the leader of the rogues attacked Guardian Moon, we found a bunch of electronics on his person and in his vehicles. Since the attack took place before 5 in the morning, I held off sending the request for your presence to a more reasonable hour. I had about 3 hours to crack the security on the devices before I did. I managed to download about 90% to 100% of each of their contents by then. I wanted to roll my eyes in amusement at his humble brag, but refrained as I watched Councilman John begin to shift uncomfortably. About 5 minutes after I sent you the email, the devices were wiped remotely. On a hunch, I focused my efforts on his personal phone and email and I found these. He pulled up several text records and emails between Shane and Councilman John detailing complaints of kidnapping activities and how they needed to be more careful to collect shifters from non-sanctioned packs, as he couldn't keep sweeping these requests for investigation under the rug. There were follow-up responses from Shane reminding him of their agreement and letting him know of bonuses that would hit his account for his troubles. This is lies. Fabrications, he spat as he stood up. You will not accuse me of these vile things. I have been a member of the council for over 3 decades. You will show me respect. He stomped over to the door to find my bears blocking the way. He turned around, sweating and his face red. I also thought perhaps this wouldn't be enough to prove this councilman, so I started poking around. I found your bank accounts from abroad, Evergreen said as he pulled up several emails with these bonus conversations side by side to bank accounts with corresponding deposits for the same amounts from CRA Pharmaceuticals. One dated back to where Shane's dad was still CEO. I had to give it to Evergreen. He was good. The man earned the right to humble brag in my book. Alpha Helios, do you perhaps have some room in your cells? Councilman Matthias said as anger radiated from all of them. Councilman John growled and began shifting in the conference room. I pushed Nat behind me and shot a quick current of electricity at him. I had found in my fight with Shane that I no longer needed my staff to use my power. Not enough to kill him, but enough for him to stop shifting and twitch on the ground a little. My bears came in and dragged him in silver cuffs towards the cells. I looked out the window and saw the sun beginning to set. Shall we have dinner and continue this once the royal family arrives? We've already had a bit of a long day, I suggested, and we all went towards the dining room. After dinner, we were all chatting amicably while we waited for the vampire to show up. We were talking about Celeste's upcoming wedding when the gate guard linked me of the royals' arrival. We went outside to wait for them and when the queen stepped out, I felt Gonzalo stiffen behind me. What's wrong? I asked. I thought you said it would only be the king and queen. He hissed through the link. This is the king and queen. Queen Carissa and her beloved, King Armand. They have been the reigning couple for the last 150 years. What's going on with you? I answered, as the councilmen began introducing themselves. I met Queen Carissa once, before she was queen, in the job in Sicily. It did not go well, but maybe she doesn't remember me, he said uneasily. This could complicate things. We'll talk later. Try not to call attention to yourself, I said. I approached the king and queen with Natalia at my side. Welcome to Guardian Moon. I apologize for the disarray. We have a lot of repairs to be done after the attack. This is my Luna, Natalia. I chose to leave the guys out of the introductions. I could always claim nerves later. He had changed since Sicily. For one, he wasn't a werewolf back then. His body had not been as big or as filled out as it was now, and he had long hair back then, but a name had ways to trigger memories. Thankfully, Evergreen took over the conversation once we were discussing the situation, fielding question after question about everything he'd discovered, with the rest of us supplementing the story as needed with our experiences. The Queen promised to send 2 of their best warriors to assist in taking down the remaining locations in a month after one of them finished her current assignment. Once we explained the issues with Councilman John, we had to face the reality that some of the remaining players may already be in the wind and this project may take a while to complete. Evergreen was tasked to try to find as many people involved through all the data we had collected in the last few months. We were given the reins, support and funds to move on all of the locations as quickly as we could. In addition to the Queen's warriors, the councilman promised to send 15 recruits for us to train and add to our roster for this project, as well as support from the councils found abroad. We finished the meeting at around 4 in the morning. The royals retreated to their rooms, which were in the basement, to provide them with the best protection from the sun as they slept. They had brought a few human guards for the daytime. We gave them a wide berth and let them do their thing. They left the following night without incident and without giving Gonzalo a second thought. I made a mental note to ask Gonzalo about how he had met the Queen, but I wasn't sure if it would do any good. He rarely spoke of his time in Sicily, and when he did, he never went into detail. The way we had found him after he'd gone missing was enough to respect his wishes, but if this complicated our work, I might have to push the issue. Helios POV. I fidgeted with the necktie of my suit, cursing. I was hot and sweaty and felt like I would have giant pit stains by the time it was time. I had already stuck tissues in there and replaced them twice. I couldn't embarrass myself like that. Helios, you're going to be fine, Marcus told me as Gonzalo finally took pity on me and fixed my tie. I nodded and went to the window to look outside. It was silly, really, to be this nervous, but I wanted this day to be perfect for her. The pack grounds looked beautiful. Elegant yet bright, with the different types of white and blue lilies adorning the area. Did they turn off the air conditioning? I was seriously baking in this suit. After waiting for half an hour in the stuffy room, I felt a hand on me and I looked up to Gonzalo smirking at me. It's time. Everyone's ready, he said. I stood up and followed everyone down the stairs. I got to my spot and waited nervously. I heard the music start and the bridesmaids started to walk out. Suddenly, she appeared next to me. She is a vision in white and blue. Her dress was simple and strapless. A modified empire waist to accommodate her figure with intricate white beading along the entire top of the dress. It started out white, then an ombre effect started halfway down to end in a deep royal blue that matched her eyes. I smiled at her, telling myself I shouldn't cry. "Are you okay?" she asked me. Always concerned for everyone but herself. I laughed. I should be asking you that question. "Are you ready?" she said as the bridesmaids' music ended. I held my arm out and then stopped. 1 second, I chuckled as I pulled the tissue from my armpits and threw them into the trash can. She laughed at my blushing face and I couldn't help but smile. "You look beautiful, Celeste," I told her, trying to stop my eyes from misting up as I held out my arm for her to take. She pulled her arm through mine. You're looking pretty handsome yourself, brother. Maybe next time we go to a wedding, you're the one on the other side of the door, she teased. We heard the music start playing again and she sobered up for a moment. Thank you, for walking me down the aisle. I couldn't imagine anyone else doing it. I am beyond honored that you asked me. You're one of the people I cherish the most in my long life. You are one of the biggest blessings I've ever had in my life, I told her as we started walking down the aisle toward Marcus, who I could see had his mouth hanging open with nothing but love in his eyes. If I cry before I say my vows, it will be your fault, she whispered and I heard her sniffle. Just remember what tulay means in Tagalog and you'll be fine, I teased, and she let out a chuckle. Natalia had mentioned their conversation a while ago. Oh goddess, you better not tell Marcus, she giggled. Your secret is safe with me, I whispered back, happy that she wasn't sniffling anymore. I handed her off to Marcus and joined my beautiful mate in the front row. She laced her fingers through mine as we watched Marcus and Celeste exchange vows. Are you okay, handsome? She asked. So you think I'm handsome? I faked surprise. Handsome, hot, annoying, brave, she said. Way to sandwich that insult in there, mi vida, I laughed at her. Well, you know, gotta keep that beautiful head of yours from getting too big, she countered. Oh, so you think I'm beautiful too? You should have added that in there too, I said smugly. You're impossible, she chuckled. Impossible to resist, I said, and when she looked at me, I wagged my eyes at her and she had to put her hand to her mouth to not laugh. I decided that was a close call and put my attention back to the ceremony. The party after the ceremony was loud and wonderful. There were bouncy castles and games for the kids, lots of food and a huge dance floor in the middle. It wasn't really my scene, but the energy and happiness in the air was contagious and I made sure to dance with Natalia. I enjoy slow dances more, but I let her drag me to the floor whenever she wants. I like seeing her happy. She's let her guard down around others a lot more now. She still struggles with her past, but we're both a work in progress and I love her the more for how she's letting me evolve along with her. All of the misunderstandings we had at the beginning really laid a path for us to finally learn to communicate and share all of ourselves with each other and others. Celeste was asleep by 9 and Marcus carried her to their room. Since we'd volunteered to drive them to the airport in the morning, we decided to walk back to Guardian Moon. As we walked under the full moon, I thought about everything that had happened in the last few months, the last 16 months, and what awaited our future. We took down another lab earlier this month, rescued another 5 shifters and 2 vampires in Georgia. Another 2 groups were on their way to the last 2 locations in the country and then we would move on to abroad. The 2 vampire warriors were due to arrive in a week and I was nervous to see how that dynamic would affect our current process. The recruits were working hard and a few were out in the field, but most still needed a bit more before I felt they would be safe. The website for our new venture had gone live about a week ago. The website was a place for small packs, sanctioned or unsanctioned and in danger, could ask for help without having to pay for the services. The council would be providing us with an allowance, but most of it would be on a voluntary basis. My old warriors were more than happy to help and all the shifters we had rescued had also signed up for these assignments. We were getting word out and hopefully new pack members would begin to trickle in. Anyone in trouble, in need of a new start, anyone looking to redeem themselves, could find a place here. It wouldn't be easy, but it would hopefully be worth it for them, like it was for us. 2 recruits, that had signed up because they had experienced loss, had already asked to join, eager for a fresh start. My life couldn't get much better than this. Well, mostly. Penny for your thoughts. Nat asked me as she squeezed my hand gently. Just reflecting on all the changes. I feel like we have not really had a chance to breathe yet, absorb it all. Things keep changing, I smiled at her. Yeah, it's a change for both of us old people. We spent so much time stuck in one mentality. I like this change though. I look forward to seeing where life with you takes me. I fought so hard against myself and what I thought was a curse. It's liberating now, knowing we are making a difference. We have a purpose, Helios. You gave me that, she said, as she hugged me. I stopped and kissed her deeply. Temo, I love you. I said, as we pulled back and I put my forehead to hers. Why yo temo a ti? Tu eres mi vida, and I love you. You are my life, she whispered. I brushed my lips with hers before I gave her a squeeze and pulled back. I pulled out the ring from my pocket. I picked it out last week when I picked up my suit. It was a 5-carat pear amethyst on a platinum band. Marry me? I asked her. I had considered going down on one knee, but I wanted her to look in my eyes, not the ring. The ring was only a symbol. The love. That, she would only see in my eyes. Her eyes teared up before she nodded and threw herself in my arms. After a mind-blowing kiss, I set her down, put the ring on her finger before I lifted her up into my arms and jumped to the front of the pack house. I ran us up the stairs and into the bedroom, discarding as much of my clothes as I could on the way. I would never get enough of this woman. Gonzalo POV. I watched Helios running past the door to the kitchen and shook my head, chuckling. I should have known they wouldn't last very long at the party after Marcus took his sleepy maid away. I yawned, and made the chamomile tea to see if it would help me sleep. I haven't had a good night's sleep since I saw Queen Carissa again. She'd brought up a lot of memories I had tried to bury. She still looked so much like her sister but with a personality that couldn't be more different. I went back to my room and tried to get some work done on my laptop. Then I tried watching some TV. Then tried to get some work again. The tea wasn't working, sleeping pills weren't working. Nothing was working to keep the memories from haunting my days and dreams. I went over to the window and watched the moon sneaking out from behind a cloud. You gave them all mates. Do I not deserve one too? It would solve all of my problems, if I could just move on. I waited, and I could feel Dario, my wolf, waiting nervously to see if she would answer. He was just as desperate to find our mate. After everything we've seen and lived in the last few months, we were both willing to believe she might answer. I shook my head when I got no answer. Not sure what I had expected, but still somehow disappointed. I wasn't the one with a direct line to her. Maybe we could ask Celeste and Kara if they had any idea if I would ever have one. I turned everything off and set my alarm. We had a lot of work. At least that was a good distraction. The path the moon goddess has set for us was important, and I was glad to be able to balance the scales in our favor. The moon goddess won't abandon us. I have faith, Darius said again. It was all that was holding us together lately as we watched the people I loved the most find their happiness in this new world we were in. I woke up to find a text on my phone and my heart soared with hope when I opened it. Celeste, have patience. Things will work out, my vision hasn't changed. Unknown POV flashback. 23 years ago. When I get out of this, you're going to wish you killed me, you piece of trash, I ground out between pants as I struggled with the restraints. If you live through this, you mean, he smirked at me. I tried to struggle but I was too weak. They've kept me in this god-forsaken place for months now. I still didn't know the extent of what they wanted from me, only that they kept drawing blood and testing me for a hole I couldn't understand in between the beatings they gave me when I refused to answer their questions. I saw him with a needle full of a blue liquid and renewed my struggle. Whatever was in it, I didn't want it in me. He smirked at my panic and pushed it into my arm and pushed the liquid in. I gritted my teeth at the burning sensation as it spread up my left arm. I didn't want to give him satisfaction of hearing me scream. Once the burning spread into my chest, however, my back arced up on its own accord and a glass-shattering scream escaped from my throat. My entire body soon felt like it was on fire. I could see nothing, hear nothing but the fire in my veins. I felt a strange and painful pressure in the back of my head and I was sure that it was splitting open. I heard a woman's whisper in my ear say, "I'm sorry, this is the only way to save you," before I begged death to save me from the pain I was in. The last thing I heard was, "Pity, I really thought that formula would work." My last thought was of him. I woke up face down in a field. I had no idea where I was or when. I had a terrible taste in my mouth and I smelled something foul. I tentatively stood up. I was in a ditch and the foul smell was me. Ugh! I cringed. My entire body was in pain, but it was fading. I looked up at the darkness of the sky, wondering how long I had until the sun would rise. 2 hours maybe? I started walking down the side of the road. I stopped when I saw a deer on the other side, by the edge of the forest. I ducked slowly and approached quietly. The moment I was close enough, I pounced on it and sunk my teeth in its jugular. I felt better once I had some blood in me. I thanked it for its strength and began looking around. The sky was starting to get light and I needed to find shelter from the sun. I walked further into the forest until I found a small enclosure. I pulled debris over the cover to make sure the sun didn't penetrate my little shelter and settled into sleep for the day. I woke up shortly after sunset. Still in one piece, thankfully, though I had to admit to myself that there had been a certain amount of relief in my heart when I thought I would die. I left the safety of the small shelter and continued my journey, somewhere. I still had no idea where I was. The last place I remember being in was outside of Liverpool on assignment. I went to a bar for a drink and then everything got blurry after that and I had woken up in a cage. After what felt like hours of walking, I saw a sign indicating a gas station up ahead. I was surprised to find myself all the way out in Glasgow, but after a day of rest, I managed to get a ride to London the following night and took a plane to Palermo and then a train to Sicily. I was greeted by many surprised looks from the staff as I walked into my sister's estate. I went directly to where I knew I would find her. The ballroom, where she conducted many of her official affairs. She gave me the same surprised look her staff had as I entered. "Cassie! You're alive! We've been so worried," she said awkwardly. I rolled my eyes. She had never been very good at faking emotions. "I just wanted to let you know that I'm back and I'll be ready for my next assignment in a few days. I'll need new gear. I'll be in my room," I told her unceremoniously. "Wait," she said, and I stopped and turned. She actually looked uncomfortable. "That was different. We didn't know you were coming back. We gave your room to someone else. You can stay in one of my guest rooms for the time being until I find you a suitable place." "You gave my room away? I was gone for 9 weeks, Carissa. Did you even look for me?" I yelled at her. "That's Queen Carissa, her beloved, Armand," said from a seat at the side of the room. "You would do well to remember that you're only alive because of her. She is my sister. I can call her by her name," I argued. "You are a traitor to the crown and our species," he spat. I rolled my eyes. "So you keep reminding me. Where are my things, Your Highness?" I asked my sister. "We put things in a box downstairs." "There wasn't much," she said. "Yeah, that was on purpose," I thought. There was no point in keeping much in a place I only slept a handful of nights a year. I was always being sent from one assignment to another. Anything to keep me out of the council's line of sight. I was a reminder of my sister's only act of mercy. A weakness for a traitor to our kind and a shame to the royal family. "I will retrieve my items. If you could please provide me with new gear and my next assignment," I bowed and left. I found a box of my things under the basement stairs. I reached in, looking for 2 things only. I began to panic as I threw out item after item until I felt a tear of relief leave my eyes as I finally found what I was looking for. I held the coral ring to my chest as I found the letter inside the book at the very bottom of the box. These were the only things I needed. The rest could burn. I had no ties to anything else. I leaned against the wall under the stairs and read the letter for probably the 5,000th time. I let my tears flow freely as I remembered the night he died. I wished I could have been braver then. I wish I would have left with him when he asked me to. My memories flashed back to that night. I saw him lying on the floor of the forest, being beaten to death while my sister's guards dragged me away. That was the night I lost everything. I felt pressure in the back of my head. An immense pain that made my vision blurry and I felt my hand shaking before everything went black. I woke up 3 hours later. I was still under the stairs. I felt something dry on my face and I wiped to find there was dried blood at the entrance of my nose. Not 100% sure of what happened, I grabbed some clothes, my ring, and letter and went upstairs to wait for my next assignment. End flashback. Helios POV get to the hospital. Celeste is in labor. I mind-linked Gonzalo, Theo, Sebastian, and Natalia. I had just gotten the text from Marcus. I ran towards the front of the pack house and met Natalia there. I lifted her up and she wrapped her legs around me. Where was I going again?" I whispered in her ear and she grinned at me. I walked slightly away from the pack house and jumped towards Crescent Moon. "No fair, drop her off and come back for me. I don't want to run all the way. Sebastian mind-linked me. Ask Theo if you can ride him. This one is closed, I answered. We do that in private, you promiscuous alpha, he said with mock indignation. I rolled my eyes at his innuendo and laughed as I walked hand in hand with Natalia into the hospital where Alexander, Marie, Danny, and Jillian were already waiting. The guys will be here shortly, I told them. Danny nods. It's adorable how nervous he looks when it's not him or his mate in there. Maya and Camilla are getting the kids ready. They will be here shortly too, he says and winces as he hears loud growls coming from the double doors. Contractions clearly hitting her hard. I raise an eyebrow and his face gets red. I am having a bit of a flashback to when Maya had James, he explains and winces again as we hear Celeste growling again through the double door. Everyone else joins us and we wait nervously for the newest member of our family to arrive. Do you think I could take her pain away? I've never tried to help someone in labor. I feel so useless. Nat mind links me 10 minutes later as we hear Celeste's growls turn into progressively louder screams. Before I could even respond, we heard the beautiful cries of a new little pup entering the world. Everyone in the waiting room cheered and howled in support, causing little Josue, Camila's pup, to startle and begin to cry. We settled down guiltily and waited patiently. Finally, after 20 minutes, the door opened and Dr. Castle opened the door. I know I can't keep you from barging in, but remember the Luna just gave birth and she deserves some rest. Danny was already pushing past with Maya before he could finish talking. He sighed and let the rest of us go through. Celeste was sitting up on the bed looking tired but happy. Marcus was by her side, holding a tiny blue bundle in his arms and a huge smile on his face. Everyone, meet Lucien Sol Salonen. My eyes widened at that and I looked over at Celeste, who was looking at me nervously. I struggled to keep my emotions in control. Nat squeezed my hand and pushed me forward. I felt a couple of people pat my back as I make my way to the bed. I can feel the tears wanting to spill and I blink a few times to stop them. I can't trust myself to speak so I just bent down and hug her tight. I am probably holding her for a minute or two before I pull back and give her a kiss on her forehead before I look at Marcus. May I? I asked and he passed me the little boy in his arms. He's a cute little guy, blue eyes and black curly tufts adorned his head. I'm not allowed much time to bond with my namesake, however, before I'm forced to pass him on to another eager fan. I watch Nat with a little bit of longing when it's her turn to hold him. The last time we talked about children, she told me she didn't know when she'd be ready. I didn't blame her, considering what happened to her only son, and I would wait until she was ready, but it didn't stop me from daydreaming about seeing a little Nat running around our pack house. After half an hour, Dr. Castle came in to put his foot down and kicked us all out. I'll go get the car, Theo said. I'll pass. I want to go for a run, Gonzalo said as he took off towards the woods to shift. I frowned a little. He had been so withdrawn since the attack a couple of months ago. I was worried about him, and I missed talking to my friend. I felt a tug on my hand and I turned to look at Nat. Can we take a walk by the river? Sure. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded but I could feel her nerves through the bond. We'll make our way back on our own later, I told the boys. They nodded and left. She held onto me as I jumped to the river bank. We walked a little in silence, holding hands. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I waited for her to gather her thoughts and communicate with me. We had both been alone for so long and we still struggled to communicate some days. We were learning to recognize it and gave each other time now. I want a baby, she said so suddenly, and it brought me to a complete stop. I was stupefied and I didn't manage to say anything at first. She waited for me to talk, then when I still didn't, she said again, I'm ready to try to have a baby with you, Helios. My mouth flopped open and closed like a fish. I thought it would take her years to be ready. She looked nervous suddenly. Do you not want to anymore? I just thought. I love our life. I love our friends. I want our children to play with their children. I want them to grow up with our family. There will never be another group of people in our lives who will love them so completely. I want that for them. Please talk to me. I can't feel anything through the bond and it's making me really anxious, she said. I looked down at her, processing her words. Will you talk already? You're making her nervous. We want pups, what do you have to think about? Ezekiel growls at me, snapping me from my shock. I moved in front of her and smashed my lips down to hers. I picked her up without letting go of her lips and jumped up to our balcony. I opened the door and dumped her on the bed, removing my clothes faster than she could blink. I jumped on top of her and started ripping her clothes off and she started laughing. I didn't mean right now. I still have to get off birth control, she squealed as I tore off her bra. I stopped for a moment and grinned at her. We'll count this as practice. Before I dip down and kiss her with all the happiness she's brought me. I love you, I tell her between kisses, so much. I kiss down her neck and suck on the beautiful mark she allowed me to place on her. You make me so happy, I say over her moan. She grabs my head and brings it up to her eye level. I don't know what she's looking for in my eyes, but I let her see all the love I have for her. She smashes her lips to mine and flips us over. I groan as she takes my hardened shaft and sinks all the way down on it. I grab hold her as she begins to ride me. You feel so good, Nat, I tell her. She is my world. I don't know how I lived so long without her by my side and I hope I never have to again. I let my hands travel to her waist and I started increasing the pace. She slumped down on my shoulder as she came down from her high, and I flipped her back on the bed. I put her legs over my shoulders and drove back into her. She arched her back at the intrusion and moaned. I felt close. I smashed my lips to hers as I continued to chase my own release. Nat, come for me again, baby. I want to hear you scream again, I whispered into her ear before I bit the lobe and sucked it into my mouth. She gasped and moaned loudly. Her core milked me again and I felt myself explode inside her. I collapsed on top of her and smiled when I felt her hands running through my sweat-soaked hair. That was the reason I was letting it grow. I loved these moments of intimacy. I love you, she said quietly. I kissed her jaw softly. When do you want to start trying? She asked. I smiled, whenever you're ready. You're the one that has to do all the hard work. I'll get off birth control tomorrow, she said, and I looked up to see her smiling at me. I smiled back, imagining her round with my pup. Gonzalo POV, what's going on with you, Gonzalo? You look like Pop, Helios asked me. Helios was more observant than I thought. He has been my best friend and leader for almost 1,800 years. I should have known he would notice. He knew me like I knew him. I sighed. I haven't been sleeping well. I will do better, Alpha. I'm not worried about you doing better. Your work is spotless. You, on the other hand, have dark circles under your eyes. I have heard you running in the middle of the night or in the gym. You haven't been yourself since you saw Queen Carissa. I know you don't like talking about it, but maybe it would help if you talked to someone about what happened in Sicily. Queen Carissa, the queen of the vampires. That woman had almost destroyed me once 200 years ago, and now she was somehow with my life again. Just hearing her name put me in a sour mood. I'm fine. It has nothing to do with Queen Carissa. It's probably just stress from the attack. I'll do better. Can we drop it? We have a meeting in about half an hour about the arrival of the vampire assassins the Queen is sending and the plan for the compound we're going to be hitting next. Helios gave me a look before sighing and nodding. Helios and I have always had a good relationship. There was nothing I kept from him except Sicily. Her in Sicily. I got up and headed to the door when he said more quietly, "It doesn't have to be me, you know? If you don't trust me, just talk to someone. I miss my friend." I took a deep breath and left the room, fighting against my own emotions and guilt. Over the last couple of months, everyone I cared about had been asking me for an explanation, and I have been lying and telling them I was okay. It might actually help. If we talk to someone about what happened to you. Dario, my wolf, said. We just need to find our mate. Everything will be better once we find our mate. I said stubbornly. All I needed was to keep my head above the water until I found my mate. I had seen how the mate bond had transformed Helios' loneliness when he found his mate. That was what we needed. I went up to my room and showered. As I put my clothes on for the meeting, my eyes went to the top dresser drawer. It was calling me. Every atom in my body wanted to hold it again. I shook my head and grabbed my tablet. I reviewed everything we needed to cover in today's meeting and headed down to the conference rooms. We'd forwarded the International Council the name and address of Shane's father, but the man was in the wind. Evergreen hadn't been able to find a picture for his face recognition software, and Councilman John was still not talking. In the meantime, we're gearing up to take down all of the labs in the States. The council had sent us some recruits to train, provided us with some funds, and the vampire royals were sending their 2 best assassins. We had our work cut out for us, but it was something we needed to do. The vampires were scheduled to arrive this evening and we had a long to-do list on our plate. I walked into the conference room. Every rank member of Guardian Moon and Crescent Moon but the Alpha and Luna was present. I felt a sense of pride that Helios and Marcus were trusting me to lead this project. They were all my family and I was happy to see they trusted me as much as I trusted them. Celeste and Marcus will be here shortly. Little Lucian got his first month shots today and has been a little cranky. Only puts up with Mom at the moment. Jillian explained. How's little Josue doing? I asked him. His own mate had given birth only a month before Celeste. His eyes lit up at my question. A sure sign of a happily mated wolf, and I envied him that. He's great. A real handful some days. The packhouse is going to be in trouble once all these pups start running around together. I fear for our sanity. I chuckle at his words. Their packhouse had definitely gotten a lot busier in the last 2 years, and you could see how much they enjoyed that. I looked over at Theo and Sebastian and wondered if they were still considering adopting. After being together for 187 years, Sebastian was ready, but Theo wanted to wait until the entire mess with the research labs was done. I looked at Helios and Natalia and frowned. I didn't actually know where they were in terms of wanting children. I realized then that I hadn't really spent much time with any of my family in the last 2 months. I haven't been a very good friend lately. Are you okay? Theo mind-linked. I forced a smile back on my face. Yep. Just thinking it's been a while since we've had a poker night. Maybe we should figure out some time for a guys' night. Ooh, yes. I think that's a great idea. He said. Marcus and Celeste walked into the office then, and we got down to business. We've narrowed down the group to head to Rochester next week. According to our information, that's the biggest lab in this hemisphere. We're flying in both private planes, so we have enough room for any rescued shifters on the way back. Everyone in this room is going but Theo and Celeste, so we can have someone in charge in case of emergencies at home. Plus, we'll take Evergreen and about 30 warriors. 20 from Guardian Moon and 10 from Crescent Moon. Oh, and the 2 vampires, who are due to arrive in a few hours. I listed off. 1 vampire. Did you not get the email? Marcus asked. What email? I said as I looked through my emails again. Here, he said, showing me his phone. I looked at the phone and groaned. They misspelled my name in the email. Awesome. Any other emails I missed? Oh, I didn't even notice. I'm sorry, Helios said sheepishly. I'll forward them your way and contact the council to update their contacts. He went through his phone and suddenly my tablet started dinging. I say. Most are just financial information. Receipts of the deposits of the funds they promised us, which you should be getting notifications from the bank anyway. One of their people got delayed and will be about a month or so late in arriving. The other one will be here as scheduled, he said. I'm really sorry, I had wondered why you never mentioned the emails, but I thought you were just dealing with stuff. He added via mind link. I felt a little insulted that he thought I would let my personal issues get in the way of our mission, but then again, I couldn't really fault him. I had shut down to anything but minimal conversation. I really needed to get out of this funk. I'll add another warrior to the group to make up the muscle power. I'll forward all of you a copy of Evergreen's work on mapping the compound. It's rough, since we don't have camera feeds this time, but it should help us with the general layout and where we might have the most problems. We'll go into more detail the closer we get to the day. I've booked some buses and hotel rooms, so prepare for an overnight. We shouldn't be gone more than 36 hours, but we need to make sure that anyone we rescue is good for traveling and to give Nat a chance to rest before heading back. My recommendation would be to take a doctor with us so they can deal with the smaller injuries so Nat can focus on the more serious stuff. We don't have any idea how many or what kind of condition we'll find people, but if the size is anything to go by, we might be coming back with a lot of new shifters. I'll talk to Dr. Castle. He might be willing to go. I would recommend Valeria, but I am not sure if she's ready to be away from little Eva, Celeste said. We all nodded. Little Eva was only 4 months old. We have some time to figure it out, I said gently. That's kind of all I have on my end. I've got the rooms on the 2nd floor ready for the vampires. The windows have inside shutters for their protection and so they feel safe. We've got many fridges in each suite stocked with blood, which I guess I'll move the stock from one to the other so it doesn't go to waste. I looked up from my tablet to see everyone. Anyone have anything else? I want to see the progress of your warriors to see if I'm grabbing any for the advanced training. Can you set it up for some time this week? Danny asked and I nodded, adding it to my to-do list, and not an agenda item, but James' birthday part is this weekend and you're all dead if you don't show up. Maya's words, not mine. We all laughed and the meeting basically broke up after that. Hey Gonzalo, Marcus needs to go do some alpha stuff with Helios. Will you walk me home? It's a nice day out, Celeste asked. I took a look at her and then Marcus, who was trying to get past me stealthily. I raised an eyebrow at her and she gave me her big blue puppy eyes and I chuckled, giving her my arm. Well played, Luna. I teased her. We start walking towards the bridge that connects both pack grounds. It's nuts to think that, just 6 months ago, this was the last place I saw myself ever stepping back on, let alone living in it. The war that had claimed Celeste's parents and her pack had not been done by us, but I had been the one to find Alpha Jeff and I felt the guilt for what happened to her as badly as Helios did. How are you doing lately? She asked. I was going to lie, but couldn't. Not to Celeste. She had the gift of sight and Kara, her wolf, had a connection to Selene. There was no hiding from her. I had a bad experience with vampires a long time ago. Queen Carissa reminds me of someone I knew. It's brought up some bad feelings that I thought I was over. Is that why you haven't been sleeping and have been shut off? She asked. I looked at her when she said that. Who tattled? I asked her, trying and failing to sound playful. Selene, actually, she laughed and my eyes widened. I thought she would say Helios, Theo, or even Nat. Did she say anything about my mate? When will I find her? I asked nervously. She frowned and my heart sank. Did I not have a mate? Soon, she said. But she gave Kara 2 messages for you. 1. Your pain won't go away when you find your mate, it's something you will need to deal with one way or another and how you deal with it, will determine your happiness. And 2. Sometimes, trust is a leap of faith where you give someone the chance to prove it, not earn it. That's not very reassuring, I frowned. I wish I had more, but she's very cryptic. I have just learned to trust that the tidbits she gives me are what people need, she said as we continued to walk. You can always talk to me, you know. But you should talk to your friends, Gonzalo. Keeping things inside will just rot your beautiful soul. Thank you. I will keep all of your words in mind. I am not sure how easy it will be, Celeste. I haven't talked about Sicily with anyone. I don't even know where I would begin. You will know when it's time. Don't let them rush you, but perhaps, don't shut them out either. It's okay to grieve and live at the same time. She squeezed my arm as we arrived at the bridge. I smirked when I saw Marcus waiting for her there. I think your mate's alpha business is finished, Luna, I said pointedly. She blushed, maybe I lied. It wasn't alpha business as much as it was Luna business. Thank you for the lovely walk. I look forward to meeting your mate. I'm sure she will be as wonderful as you. She gave me a quick hug before she walked over to Marcus. I turned back towards the pack house. Run? Dario asked me. I walked over to a bench near the pack house and removed my clothes. I shifted to my reddish-brown wolf and let him take over. I had a lot to think about and running always helped. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.